Welcome to Business Chats with Debbie, where we talk big stories with small businesses. I'm your host, Debbie Wolverton, and today I've got the lovely Matt Carey from Carey Financial Planning, is it? Financial Services? Management? Whatever, I don't care. I got the first bit right.
Yeah,
Carey Financial Management,
That's
there
the
we
one.
go.
There we go, we're in.
So we do, you're a registered IFA.
Yeah.
So you do basically anything, pensions, life insurance, ISAs, everything like that.
Yeah.
But I thought today we'd talk about pensions.
Okay.
Because I think pensions are really, really important, and I don't think people realise the importance of having a personal pension. Do you know what I mean? My mum and dad were of the era, the state will look after you, the state pension will be enough for you to live on when you retire. That ain't the truth anymore.
No, those days are long gone.
And more so if you're in rented accommodation, because you've still got your rent to pay, and you'll be lucky if the state pension covers your rent. So you'll be working until you drop because you need the income.
Yeah.
So we need to talk about how important personal pensions are. So I've got a list, see?
Okay.
Because we've had quite a few things that have really impacted the values of pensions over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
COVID, the nasty C word being one. Because obviously pensions are all based on most of them are stock exchange. Mm-hmm. COVID hit, stock exchange plummeted. We sort of recovered a little bit, then the Ukraine war hit and it's dropped off again.
It's taken a good battering over the last
But pensions are long term, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? They are for the long term, so it's something you need to be looking at if you haven't got one in place.
Yes, 100%. It's I'm a big advocate of pensions. Not just because, but the number of sort of advantages to investing into a pension are vast, and it's just an excellent way to invest, both for those who are approaching retirement and children. It's a great way
That's
for
what
parents.
we've talked about, isn't it? Children, starting pensions.
Great
for
way
the,
to
for
invest
the
for children in the future.
Because I read somewhere that if a grandparent invested in a pension from the day that basically the grandchild was born, they would be able to retire by the time they were 40 with like £1 million pension pot.
There's
at £20 a month or something stupid.
Yeah, I see you got IHT plan in there on your list. We'll have a chat when we get to that about both the savings that grandparents can make with inheritance tax and how they can do that effectively into a child's pension to set that child up, like you say, by the time they're sort of 30, 40 years old.
Yeah, because I mean, I started my first pension when I got my first job. It's only £20 a month.
Yeah.
But do you know what I mean? I've got a nice pension pot now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? £20 a month. Okay, I did have to stop it a couple of times for certain reasons, but do you know what I mean? I didn't miss £20 a month. No. And the amount of people who are my age now who haven't got any personal pensions, I'm not going to tell you my age, but my age, personal pensions in place. And do you know what I mean? It's never. I don't think it's ever too late. Do you know what I mean? To start investing in a pension, especially if you can make lump sum payments. And then obviously if you've got a limited company, the benefits, especially with the corporation tax rates rising, guys, which are supposed to hit from April, making pension contributions to your limited company will save the corporation tax, and obviously you're putting it into pension. Yeah. No brainer to me.
Yeah, it's as I say, there's a number of advantages to investing in a pension, and if you're a director of a limited company, by far and away one of the best ways to invest any profits, if you like, from that limited company is to put it into a pension.
There are going to be ups and downs. Do you know what I mean? It's inevitable. Life is just ups and downs, but it's long term and it's long term growth. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? That you're going to get to increase your pension pot, so you can retire. I'm not saying, do you know what I mean, have a lavish lifestyle, but you can afford to take a holiday. You can afford to pay your fuel bills, because the fuel bills are just going to keep going up and up and up. And do you know what I mean? You don't have to worry about paying things when they come through.
And like you say, the state pension, is what it is.
What is it? What, 181?
185 is the maximum.
So what's
that?
9.6, 9.7 a year?
9.660, I think it is a year.
Is it?
It's not, and it's not something you can rely on.
No.
So
and the wage is going up.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you've got to wait longer before you actually get it. Whereas with your own personal pension, you can put your own retirement age in.
You can, but they've just raised the minimum age on personal pensions.
Yeah, but it's a lot lower than 68.
Yeah, it's a lot lower. But, that is one change, one of the many changes that the government's made, is that the age that you can take your personal pension has just increased.
What's it gone up to now?
57 now, I believe.
It's still, 10 years, 9 years?
Yeah, you've still got... Still got a long time.
I've known so many people who've got to retirement age, just started taking the state pension, and then they've gone.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And do you know what I mean? I've got my own personal pension, so what I'm planning for is that kicks in before the state pension kicks in. Okay, my pension's enough to do that, is so I can actually retire before I have to retire.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I can enjoy what I've
or you can look at phased retirement. If you just want to slow down, you can take a little bit out of your pension just to give you that bit of a buffer.
So there's more, there's that flexibility, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what else have I got on my list here? Is IHT planning.
IHT.
Because you mentioned at the YP thing the other day about IHT planning.
Yeah.
You asked the question, and you could see everyone's blank faces because people don't think about IHT planning, do they?
They don't.
Until often it's too late.
Yes.
And the threshold for IHT plan is 325.
Yeah.
£325,000. That's nothing in the context of how much your house
Yeah.
is going up, and the limits is staying the way
again,
it is.
One of the changes the government didn't make was to
increase the limit.
your IHT allowance. And they're not going to review that now until 2028.
Yeah.
So if you think how property prices have risen over the last 7 years, 7 years.
Yeah. So you basically could wipe out your IHT allowance before you've even, without just your house.
Yeah.
Without anything else, any savings, anything else you've got in the pot, which will be taken into account when you die.
Yeah.
And the rate of IHT is 40%. 40%, guys, most people won't pay 40% tax ever in their lives, but you'll pay 40% on your estate when you die, which goes to the government. So my idea is, do your IHT planning so you pay as little IHT tax as possible, legally, and it goes to your family.
Yeah.
I'd rather it goes to my family than the tax man. I've paid enough tax. Because basically, you're paying tax to the tax man on income that you've already been taxed on.
Yep. Yeah, you're paying that tax again.
So I know it's not theory. I know that the tax amount's not right. So if you're paying tax at 20%, you're basically paying 60% tax. It's not really realistic, but realistically, 60% tax to the government.
Yeah.
So what do we need to know about IHT planning?
So in terms of pensions fall outside of your estate for IHT. Mm-hmm. So anything within that pot, if you were to pass away, would pass to the beneficiaries of your that you put within that pension. Yeah.
So now, your children or your husband.
Your children or your husband. Any you can name your beneficiaries, and part of the process that I do with pensions is that we'll set up a trust that will run alongside your pension. So if you want to, we can take that pension pot and put it in a trust, which saves that pension pot going to probate, saves a lot of time, a lot of hassle, and it will pass to the beneficiaries of that trust. Yeah,
and they can start taking the income basically straight away rather than having to wait for probate.
And the great thing about pensions again is that that pension pot doesn't affect the beneficiary's lifetime allowance. Yeah. So as no bearing on their pension.
That's come down as well over the years, wasn't it? Yeah, it's a stupid figure. It's
1.073100, I think it is. Where I'm not sure where it comes from, how they've worked it out.
So that has been coming down. Do you know what I mean?
It's come down. But again, it's one of those that at the moment is staying where it is. But of course, everything else is increasing. Yeah. So it's
because I've got someone who I know who basically, because I didn't know, they reassess it, don't they, when you get to 70?
Yes.
And then they look at your pension pot, and he's been hit because his pension's gone over the lifetime allowance.
Okay.
At the age of 70, so he's been hit with a huge tax bill.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh. Yeah. So it's these things. People just seem to think, oh yeah, I don't have to worry about it. It'll just. But these things do need. It's like your will, basically. You need to relook at these things every. Right. It's not something you get done and then just put it on a back burner and leave it. You need to keep looking at these things every 5, 10 years, so that, because things will grow and things will change, and the tax laws change and everything, is something that needs reassessed. And I don't think it's too early to look at IHT planning at really any age. You've got to look. The earlier you look at it, the more you can put in place.
Yeah, definitely.
Because obviously, if you leave it too late, you've got the 7-year rule anyway. Yeah. So anything you gift within that 7 years, if you die within that 7 years, then there's a clawback on tax.
Into the estate. Yeah.
So it's to me, it's never too early really to look at.
And one thing worth mentioning with the IHT, which goes back to what I was saying at the York Partnerships meeting, is that if you've got a pension pot, but you've also got a savings pot, it's always better to use that savings pot up first before you start touching your pension, because that savings pot forms part of your estate.
Yeah.
So if you can reduce that down and leave your pension until the very last thing to start drawing from, you're saving on inheritance tax should anything happen.
Does life insurance come into your estate? It depends on, there's all different types of life insurance.
It depends who it's going to, how it's written. But again, trusts are very important when it comes to life assurance. And making sure you've got the right trust set up with the right beneficiaries. But there's ways and means that you can make sure. And
you've got to look at the whole picture. I mean, that's the whole thing. People just tell you bits and pieces, but you've actually got to look at the whole picture and everything that comes into that estate to make a decision on it.
That's sort of part of what I do is we look at everything. We look at the whole picture. And like you say, if I speak to someone early in their lives, then things are going to change over time. Legislation's going to change. Careers are going to change. Families going to change. So all these different things have an effect on what that end goal is, if you like. And so we can bring in different things, we can take away certain things, and just make sure we've got your financial platform set up properly.
To avoid paying us.
Well, it's not tax avoidance.
It's not tax. It's putting it in a tax wrapper so that you don't. Do you know what I mean? You pay the tax you have to.
Yeah. It's just making sure that your money is as tax efficient as it can be.
And so that's it, guys. Don't leave it too late, because do you know what I mean? As the clock ticks. It's one of them things we don't think about. Do you know what I mean? We don't think about wills, because if we think we're going to write a will, we're going to die. Well, we're all going to die at some point. But a will is really, really important. LPAs, that's another passion of mine, is make sure that everyone's got the lasting power of attorneys in place. And estate planning. They're the three things that I'm really passionate about, because as an accountant, do you know what I mean? You can see what can go wrong if you haven't got these things in place. And do you know what I mean? You've got them, you do them. Put them in the back, put them in the drawer. You don't have to worry about them until, do you know what I mean? Until you have to review them again. But to me, they're so important.
I think it's really important that those things, your wills, your LPAs, your trusts, are set up properly. Because if they're not, it's like opening a can of worms, and it's horrendous.
Some horror stories of trusts
that
aren't being set
wrong,
up.
It's
and you went out with all best intentions to protect everything, and then it all falls flat, and you've still got to pay inheritance tax because it wasn't set up properly in the right place. So thank you so much for coming in today.
That's all right. It's been a pleasure.
And we're going to go and eat donuts now, guys. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next time on the podcast. Bye bye.